You've spent your whole life trying to be good, polite, controlled, pleasant, put together. But late at night, when it's just you and your thoughts, something else emerges. A voice, a feeling, a tension that doesn't match the mask you wear during the day. It whispers things you don't want to hear. Your hidden anger, your jealousy, your hunger for power, your pain that never got a name. You flinch, you scroll, you sleep, you bury it again. But Carl Jung warned us, what we bury doesn't die. It grows, it waits, and it controls us from the dark. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. That's not just poetic, it's a diagnosis. Because the parts of you that you've rejected, the impulses, memories, emotions, instincts, cravings, they don't vanish. They become your shadow. And your shadow isn't evil. It's not your enemy. It's the part of you that was never allowed to speak, but never stopped screaming. You've felt it, haven't you? That inner split, like something deep inside you is missing, broken, or hidden. Like you're fragmented. You don't hate yourself because you're bad. You hate yourself because you never learned how to understand what you feel. This isn't about blaming your past. It's about reclaiming what got lost in it. Because inside your darkness, there's power. Not chaotic, destructive power, but ancient, raw, primal clarity. The kind of inner force that makes you whole again. Not by pretending you're perfect, but by becoming someone real. That's what this video is about. Not motivation, not performance, but the truth behind your personality. The unseen power behind your emotional pain. And how your shadow, the version of you that you've been hiding from, might actually be the key to everything you've been searching for. So if you've ever felt torn between who you are and who you pretend to be, if you've ever feared that something inside you is broken, if you're done running from yourself and finally ready to listen, this is your invitation. Let's go into the dark, not to suffer, but to awaken. Since childhood, you were taught what was acceptable. Be nice. Say thank you. Don't raise your voice. Don't make others uncomfortable. Slowly, you learned how to wear a mask, one that fits the room, one that gets approval, one that avoids rejection. This mask is what Jung called the persona, the version of yourself you create for the world. It's not fake, it's functional. It helps you survive, but it comes at a cost. Because the more you refine the mask, the more you forget the face underneath. You become the calm one, even when you're boiling inside. You become the achiever, even when you feel hollow. You become the caretaker, even when you're barely holding yourself together. And in doing so, everything that doesn't match your image, your anger, your ambition, your sadness, your fear, gets pushed into the basement of your psyche. Out of sight, out of conversation, but never out of power. That's your shadow. And it starts whispering, not with words, but with tension, with procrastination, with sudden overreactions you can't explain, with anxiety that spikes out of nowhere. Ever found yourself furious over something small? Not returning a text fast enough, a coworker taking credit, someone disagreeing with you on something stupid. The reaction feels too big for the moment. That's not just mood, that's repressed emotion, long buried, demanding air. Or maybe you've caught yourself self-sabotaging. You finally get the opportunity you've been hoping for, and suddenly, you freeze. You ghost the email, you miss the deadline, you convince yourself you're not ready. That hesitation isn't laziness. It's your shadow, trained to believe it's safer to shrink than to shine. In the US, especially in high-pressure environments, whether it's a 28-year-old woman in Brooklyn trying to juggle freelance work and her mental health, or a 42-year-old father in Phoenix trying to be strong for his kids while ignoring the burnout gnawing at him, the mask becomes the only self they recognize, and the mirror becomes unbearable. Because what do you see when the mask slips? Something messy, unfiltered, emotional, real. But we weren't taught to value that. We were taught to control it, suppress it, disown it. And so we keep curating ourselves, even in therapy, even in journaling, even alone. But here's the truth. Your persona is how you survive in the world, but your shadow is how you survive yourself. To truly heal, you can't just polish the mask. You have to turn and face the mirror with honesty and courage. You're not broken. You're not weak. You're just fragmented. And this is where integration begins. You think you're in control, you plan, you organize, you set goals, you even meditate. But there's a problem. The part of you running the show isn't the one you think. Carl Jung wasn't trying to sound poetic when he said, "What you resist persists." He meant it literally. The traits you've tried to avoid, the anger you deny, the insecurity you cover, the jealousy you pretend doesn't exist, don't just go away. They go underground. They become unconscious drivers of your behavior. You start noticing patterns. You keep attracting emotionally unavailable people. You overwork and then burn out. Again, you lash out at those you love when they get too close. You swear it's not you. You tell yourself, "I didn't mean to. I don't know why I did that. It's not who I really am." But what if it is? Not in a moral sense, but in a psychological one. The shadow doesn't disappear just because you ignore it. It leaks out sideways, in sarcasm, in passive aggression, in addictions dressed as just one drink, in obsessions with fitness, money, or perfection, all designed to bury the deeper wound. Take Ryan, 36, a tech manager in Austin. On paper, he's thriving, six-figure job, working remote, decent social life. But every time a woman starts to like him, he ghosts. He tells himself he's not ready, that he's focused on career. But underneath it, a shadow filled with childhood rejection, a fear of being fully seen, and a rage he never processed toward a father who only praised results. Or Olivia, 29, in Portland. Everyone sees her as the chill girl. She avoids conflict like it's radioactive, but once a month she explodes, texts full of blame, disappearing from friends for days. Not because she's crazy, because her shadow has been swallowing resentment in silence for too long. And the unconscious doesn't like silence. It wants to speak, through symptoms, through patterns, through breakdowns that look like bad luck. That's why Jung believed your shadow will find a way to live, even if that means turning you into everything you swore you'd never become. Because it's not trying to ruin your life. It's trying to show you what's unresolved. And until you recognize that, you'll keep playing out the same story. New people, new jobs, new therapists, same cycle. The truth is hard to admit. You're not just hurting from what happened to you. You're hurting from what you buried afterward. From the rage that had no outlet. From the fear that was mocked. From the grief that no one held. And so, the shadow holds it, not as punishment, but as preservation. It waits until you're ready to feel, to name, to reintegrate. You can't heal what you won't touch, and you can't evolve while repressing the very thing that demands your attention. You don't need to fear the shadow. You just need to learn its language. And in doing so, you reclaim yourself. Your emotions aren't random. They're coordinates. Each one points somewhere specific, to a moment, to a memory, to a part of you still waiting to be understood. But most of us weren't raised to read that map. We were taught to manage emotions, not explore them, especially the bad ones. Anger, envy, shame, grief, fear. But here's the truth, Jung hinted at. Your shadow doesn't hide in logic. It hides in feeling. Let's start with anger. Most people either suppress it or explode. But anger isn't always rage. Sometimes it's a boundary that was crossed too many times, without consequence. It's the voice that says, "I've had enough." When your persona says, "It's okay, I understand." Your anger might be protecting your worth. It might be the most honest thing you haven't said yet. Now take shame. That sick, sinking feeling in your gut that says, "There's something wrong with me." It doesn't arrive out of nowhere. It's inherited, from childhood, from culture, from trauma. Maybe you were called too much, too sensitive, too loud, too quiet, too intense, too needy. Shame carves deep grooves in the psyche, and the shadow holds them, not to punish you, but because no one else could. Then there's envy. We're told it's ugly, but envy is a compass. It shows you what you long for, but don't believe you deserve. You envy the bold because your courage was buried. You envy the free because you were trained to obey. And fear? That's the oldest language your nervous system speaks. But it doesn't always mean danger. Sometimes, fear is just an emotion trapped in the past, still echoing into your present. A 35-year-old nurse in Chicago once said, "I keep saying yes to shifts I don't want, because saying no feels unsafe, even when I'm exhausted." That's not just fear of conflict. That's a shadow programmed to associate rest with rejection. Same with David, 44, in San Diego, a successful real estate agent who always jokes through pain. He can't sit in silence, because silence reminds him of being ignored as a kid. His humor isn't just a personality trait, it's armor, and beneath it, grief. All these emotions, the ones we judge, hide, or overcompensate for, they are not weaknesses, they are breadcrumbs, leading you back to the parts of you that were never allowed to exist fully. The work isn't to fix the feeling, it's to feel it long enough to know what it's trying to say. Your shadow is an emotional archive, not of what's wrong with you, but of everything you had to suppress to be accepted. Once you start listening without judgment, you begin to navigate, to name, to reconnect, and that's when something shifts. You stop being afraid of yourself. You stop reacting without knowing why. You start seeing clearly, not just others, but you. And that clarity is how integration begins. You've done everything right. You've got the degree, the job, the apartment. You're not where you used to be, but you still don't feel whole. It's not that you're failing. It's that something is missing. You laugh at parties but feel disconnected. You succeed at work but feel like an imposter. You get praised and still hear that quiet voice inside asking, is this really who I am? That feeling has a name. Jung called it the split self, the internal division between the mask you wear and the truth you've buried. You might look complete on the outside, but inside, you feel like two people. One that's admired, one that's hidden. And the hidden one, the shadow, isn't a villain. It's the part of you that holds your depth, your rawness, your intuition, your truth. But because it doesn't fit the polished image, you exile it. You become half present in relationships, half inspired in your goals, half connected to yourself. It's not apathy, it's disintegration. Jung believed that wholeness doesn't come from perfection. It comes from reconciling the opposites, light and dark, persona and shadow, discipline and emotion, clarity and chaos. Until you do that, you'll always feel like something's off, like your life is a performance you can't leave without the fear of losing it all. Consider Jenna, 38, in Denver. She leads a team of 10. She's calm, confident, respected, but alone. She cries without knowing why. She feels numb when she's supposed to feel proud. She admits, sometimes I feel like I'm just acting. That's not dysfunction. That's disconnection. Or Marcus, 26, in Atlanta. Everyone thinks he's the funny one, but the humor hides a deep dissatisfaction. He writes songs he never shows anyone. He feels more alive in those secret creative moments than in months of dating or work. Why? Because in those moments his shadow, the part that feels, that dreams, that knows, finally gets to breathe. This split self doesn't mean you're broken. It means you've adapted to survive. But now, you're being invited to evolve, to integrate, to allow the parts of you that feel too much or not enough to come forward, to stop editing your emotions before they even surface, to stop curating your personality like a product and start reclaiming your inner contradictions. Because inside those contradictions is something deeper, authenticity. Not the kind that trends on social media, the kind that makes you feel aligned, even if it's messy, the kind that allows grief and joy to coexist, that allows you to say, yes, I'm strong, and yes, I'm still healing. Integration isn't an event. It's a process of remembering, of accepting, of becoming real. The opposite of feeling split isn't being perfect, it's being whole. It's easy to think your shadow lives only inside you, but that's not how it works. The unconscious doesn't stay contained. It seeks expression, and when you don't allow it inwardly, it spills outward. Carl Jung warned, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. This is projection, one of the shadow's favorite tools. Here's how it works. You reject a part of yourself by, say, your neediness, your ambition, your intensity, and then you start seeing it everywhere else. You call others dramatic, manipulative, arrogant, clingy, not realizing those are echoes of something unowned inside you. That doesn't mean others aren't responsible for their actions, but it does mean your reactions often say more about you than about them. Think of Emma, 31, in Boston. She prides herself on being low maintenance. She's the cool friend, the chill girlfriend, but she can't stand people who always need attention. What she doesn't see is that her own need for emotional closeness was shamed early on. Now, She sees it in others and resents them for what she never allowed in herself. Or Jason, 40, in Minneapolis. He gets easily annoyed by lazy people. He works late, skips vacations, pushes everyone hard. But deep down, he resents how exhausted he is. The part of him that craves rest, that longs to slow down. He's buried it so deep that now, it only shows up as contempt for those who live more freely. Projection turns relationships into battlefields, not because people are wrong, but because they reflect things we're not ready to face. Your partner's neediness triggers the part of you that was punished for having needs. Your friend's confidence reminds you of the self-trust you never developed. Your coworker's emotional transparency exposes your discomfort with your own feelings. So you distance, you criticize, you judge, not because you're cruel, but because your shadow is trying to keep you safe by avoiding the pain of self-recognition. Jung believed that real growth begins when we take back our projections, when we stop turning people into screens for our rejected emotions. This doesn't mean tolerating abuse. It means learning to ask, what is this reaction revealing about me? It's confronting, uncomfortable, but also liberating, because once you stop projecting, you start relating. You can finally see the person in front of you, not as a threat to your image, but as an opportunity to know yourself deeper. Relationships become mirrors, not traps, and you stop repeating the same fights, the same breakups, the same disappointments, because the enemy isn't out there. It never was. It was the part of you that longed to be seen and got rejected first. Your shadow is not trying to destroy your relationships. It's trying to repair the one you abandoned, the one with yourself. And that repair begins when you stop hiding what hurts. It doesn't hit all at once. Sometimes it's a quiet discomfort that visits you when everything should feel fine. Other times, it's a silence that lingers too long after a laugh, or a single sentence from someone you love that cuts deeper than it should. That's when you feel it, the edge of something darker, something you've avoided for years. But confronting your shadow doesn't mean diving into despair. It means learning how to stay in the room with yourself, even when the lights dim. Most people think that if they look too closely at what hurts, they'll fall apart. But the truth is, you've already been falling apart, quietly in the background, through the burnout you keep calling being tired, through the disconnection you label as independence, through the moments you smile while your stomach twists. That collapse isn't dramatic, it's slow. It looks like saying yes when you mean no. It looks like waking up tired even after sleep. It looks like laughing in public and feeling numb by the time you get home. That's the shadow leaking out, and the only way forward is through. But going through doesn't mean flooding yourself. It means staying present with small truths, without running. Maybe it's letting yourself feel the irritation you usually swallow. Maybe it's noticing how your chest tightens when someone compliments you. Maybe it's letting that sadness sit in the room for once, instead of covering it with noise, chores, or productivity. There's strength in that stillness. And you've already felt glimpses of it, like that night you didn't answer the text because you were too overwhelmed to pretend, or the time you sat in your car after work and let yourself cry for no reason you could name, or when you told someone, I don't know what I feel, but I know I'm tired of hiding it. That wasn't weakness. That was your real self trying to surface. And you stayed, maybe just for a minute, but you stayed. This isn't about conquering your darkness. It's about respecting it, giving it a name, letting it breathe without letting it take over. And no, it won't always feel good, but it will feel honest. The shadow isn't here to punish you. It's here to return the parts of you that got exiled. By survival, by silence, by shame. Facing it doesn't require perfection. It only requires presence. You don't need a breakthrough. You need to stop abandoning yourself every time something uncomfortable surfaces. Because if you can stay just one moment longer than you usually do, with the grief, with the fear, with the buried anger, you begin to rewrite the story. Not the one you tell others, the one you tell yourself. That's how collapse becomes clarity. And that's how you begin to rise, from within. What if the part of you that you've been most ashamed of is the very thing that could set you free? Not in some motivational cliche, not in theory, but literally. What if your shame hides your intuition? What if your anger masks your courage? What if the fear you keep quiet is guarding the door to your deepest clarity? Carl Jung believed the shadow wasn't just where pain lives, it's where power sleeps. Think about it. The traits you suppress most are usually the ones that made you feel unsafe to express. Maybe your voice was too loud. Maybe your questions were too inconvenient. Maybe your desire was too much, or your sadness too heavy. So you adjusted. You learned to shrink, to laugh it off, to be easy. You got good at hiding. But here's the thing about hiding. It doesn't make you smaller. It makes you split. And all that emotional intensity you tucked away, it didn't vanish. It just got buried alive, waiting to be reawakened with intention. This is why some people feel inexplicably drawn to rebellion, why others feel a quiet thrill when someone speaks the truth they never dared say, why certain films, songs, or conversations make your chest ache in ways you can't explain. That ache is recognition, a part of you that's been in the dark, suddenly remembering the light. That's not weakness, that's residue of power, because the shadow holds not just what broke you, but everything about you that didn't fit the script. Everything original, raw, wild, unfiltered. And real transformation doesn't come from polishing your image. It comes from reclaiming what you lost trying to survive. There's a kind of strength that doesn't look like discipline or confidence. It looks like finally speaking the truth in a room that taught you to stay silent. It looks like not abandoning yourself after a mistake. It looks like choosing not to perform, even when performance would be safer. Somewhere along the way you were told, if they see who you really are, they'll leave. If you show your sadness, you'll fall apart. If you speak your anger, you'll be the problem. But none of that was true. What's true is this. Every time you repress a part of yourself, you surrender a piece of your inner fire. And that fire, once integrated, doesn't burn everything down. It lights the way. You don't need to fight your shadow. You need to unfold it. Trace the outline of what you once feared, and realize it was never the enemy. It was the younger you, the truer you, the stronger you, waiting to be remembered. That's the paradox. The parts you tried hardest to hide are the exact ones you'll need to become whole. You're not missing anything. You're just not using all of you yet. But you will. And when you do, you'll stop trying to feel powerful and start realizing you always were. You don't become whole by getting rid of the darkness. You become whole by learning to carry it with grace. This is what no one tells you when they talk about growth, that the version of you you've been searching for, the peaceful one, the powerful one, was never waiting in the future. It was waiting underneath, beneath the mask, beneath the guilt, beneath the noise. Integration is not a clean process. It's not glamorous. It's quiet, subtle, sometimes invisible. It's when you no longer flinch at your own anger, when you feel sadness rise, and you don't push it down. When you speak honestly, not to shock, not to impress, but because silence used to cost you too much. It's when your past stops feeling like a wound and starts feeling like a root. You begin to respond instead of react. You begin to breathe deeper without trying. You begin to look at yourself, really looks, and think, that's me. I know this person now, because you've met your shadow, and instead of running, you listened. And in doing so, you unlocked something no checklist, no habit tracker, no self-help book ever could. Alignment. The kind that doesn't need validation, the kind that doesn't collapse under pressure, the kind that can hold contradiction, strength and softness, logic and emotion, clarity and confusion, without breaking. This is where healing begins to echo, in the way you treat others, in how you stop projecting your pain onto them, in how you no longer fear intimacy, because you no longer fear being fully seen. People might notice you've changed, but they won't be able to name it. You'll just move differently, speak more deliberately, laugh with your whole body, say no without trembling, say yes without guilt. You won't feel like a new person. You'll feel like someone ancient waking up inside you, someone you forgot you were allowed to be. Integration isn't the end of the journey. It's the beginning of finally walking it, with all of you present, not just the polished parts, not just the parts they liked, but the full spectrum. You are not your trauma. You are not your projections. You are not your mask. You are the one who chose to turn toward the mirror when it would have been easier to run. You are the one who stayed. And because of that, you now walk with something no one can give you, and no one can take away. A center. And from that center, you don't need to chase transformation. You become it. You've spent years trying to fix yourself, to improve, to level up, to become someone worthy of peace. But maybe you were never broken. Maybe the problem wasn't who you are, but how deeply you had to hide to survive. The shadow was never trying to ruin you. It was trying to remind you that you are complex, layered, messy, real. And that's not something to fix. It's something to honor. Because now, you've seen what lives beneath the surface. You've stood in the dark without losing your way. And in doing so, you've done something rare. Something most people never dare to do. You stopped running from yourself. This isn't the end of the story. It's just the first honest chapter. So the next time that tension rises in your chest, the next time your emotions feel too much, the next time you catch yourself pretending to be fine when you're not, pause. And remember this, you're not falling apart. You're coming back together. That moment is not a breakdown. It's a return to yourself, to your depth, to your power. If this spoke to something deep in you, you're not alone. This space was built for people like you, people who feel too much, think too deeply, and refuse to stay asleep inside their own lives. So stay with us. Subscribe if you haven't already, not out of habit, but because your journey deserves reminders that you're not crazy for feeling this much. Comment below with just one word, reclaimed, if something in you awakened here, and share this with someone who's been silently fighting a war inside, because sometimes all it takes is hearing the right truth, at the right time, to stop hiding and start healing. Your shadow isn't the end of you, it's the doorway, and now, you've walked through it.